Hi, Anthony. Thanks so much for joining me today on the Financial Planner Live podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Like many people, the last few months have been quite different, but
Yeah.
we keep smiling and we adapt. But no, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
No worries. So have you been doing a lot of work from home during lockdown? Have you been able to get into the office? What's the setup been like for you?
Yeah, I haven't been in the office since Friday, the March of 20th of March, and
Yeah.
I never ever thought I would say this in a sentence, but I miss the office dearly. I'm
Do
very
you?
very much excited to get back in the office now. Working from home, it's been fine, and that we've
Yeah.
had the resources to be fully operational, fully functional, which has been great. And I get to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner with my children, which is great. But I think
Yeah.
there is something about that office atmosphere that I miss. I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss it.
Yeah, and I think, there's so much talk about, we don't need the offices anymore. All these offices are going to shut. And don't get me wrong, I think a lot of them will close down. People will downsize. I think the companies are being more relaxed now about this flexible working attitude. And I think rightfully so. It's going to make people a lot healthier and happier. You mentioned there about having breakfast with your children and your wife and not having to rush out the door like a maniac. And I think there's a huge amount of benefits to what's happened around it. I've felt it myself. But to shut an office, I think it's mental. I think, that's the culture of a business. People like to come in and out. Today, I've got the full office it's fantastic. There's a good vibe, a good buzz. And I think, if people think they're going to be 100% working from home and it's not going to benefit them in any way, I don't know. Offices, I think, definitely don't close them. I think we need a bit of both, a bit of 50-50.
I agree. I think there's a balance to it as well, and I think it's finding that happy balance. But I think when you think about those businesses as well that want to keep progressing, keep growing, the training element of things, and just the subliminal factors that up and coming employees learn while they're in that office environment. It's just there's no replicating that than actually being in the office. I think you're right. I think a perfect balance is the strategy going forward.
And a team man like yourself, I mean, Anthony, I've made an introduction already. You're a pro, you're an ex-pro basketball player. So when it comes to team mentality, that's what you've always done. You've been surrounded by your team, managers, everybody, trainers, coaches. So I suspect for you as well, that bouncing off of people around you, watching, listening, learning, is vital to how you progress within your career.
No, I totally agree. And I think in sport as well, we're very much so fascinated on statistics and performance, and very much like in business with KPIs, but there's an intangible factor that a lot of people don't take into consideration. And that is the teamwork, the cohesiveness. You can have an employee or an athlete that does something incredibly good. It goes under the radar, it's not recorded, but that has been a positive influence for that business or for that team. So I think when you relate the office to a sports team, I would say I'm very, very lucky to have been on some very good teams, and I understand the true value of being in a good team. And I think it's exactly the same way in business.
Fantastic. So, you were referred on to me, as somebody who I should speak to, because I put a social media message out. And as you always see especially within financial planning, there seems to be this real urge or want or need to attract people that have come from sporting backgrounds. And I was really intrigued, really, because I wanted to, get some people on the podcast that have come from professional sporting backgrounds to really look at the behaviors of what you've learned whilst you're in your professional career as a sports person, and then transferring that across to financial planning. Are there similarities? Are there things that have helped you become a better financial planner? And I want to sort of see how that transition works, because there's a huge amount of people playing pro sports, and life after sports is a big thing, isn't it? Because you retire a lot earlier, and it's like, whoa, what am I going to do now? And I think financial planning is that perfect, as you come out of professional sports, whether it be 30, 35 or something, it's almost like a perfect age, I think, to be stepping into the world of financial planning, because you've got some good solid experience. You might have a few grey hairs or whatever. So you've got a bit of, we're not getting back onto hair, are we? We're not talking about hair again. I already told you about my bad hair day, didn't I? But yeah, so, we can see that. So that was really interesting to me as well. So Anthony, just to give our listeners a sort of overview of life before financial planning, could you just tell us a little bit about your professional basketball career?
Yeah, of course, and I think it's always a case by case situation, and a lot of pro athletes will tell you their journey, and it can be very very different. But one thing is quite common: it's very rare that you'll accidentally end up a professional athlete, or stay a professional athlete. And when you look back at the early days, it does. You have to do something that separates you, apart from the masses of other people who want to what you want also. And I think I look back now, and I was very, very lucky. I had a very supportive family, and I had a good group of friends as well. But I do remember, dedication, and I remember having to perhaps, pass up on the parties, or pass up on the the extracurricular things that maybe teenagers do to discipline and commit myself to the sport, and that's what I did. I think I was very much so goal orientated. My focus was to somehow get myself on a basketball scholarship to America. I'm from a seaside town in Plymouth. Sometimes I have to repeat myself because of my accent, but we're very much so.
Hey, this is the West Country podcast today. I'm Bristol. West Country boys. Don't worry about that. Let's get ours in there.
We'll try and keep it as neutral for the viewers as possible. But we are way down there and so much far detached from the rest of the country in that sense. So I always felt that was a disadvantage. So that for me was sort of fuel in the fire. Really, I had to find a way how I could get to the States. And sport is very unique as well. A lot of sports, connect themselves with academics as well. So if I wasn't to a certain academic standard, then I wouldn't be able to qualify or be eligible for a basketball scholarship in the States. So that was the plan. That was the goal. I remember, day and night with that basketball, just in the back of your mind would be that dream, and that was my goal. And I got to around 18, 19. I was one of the best players in the country at the time, and the opportunity came for me to look at schools over in the States, and that was really how it all started for me. I flew over there, visited a few universities, and it was the University of North Georgia that really, took my, got my early love. Everything fell into place. Great school, great institution, good academics, and I played really well there. And I think more importantly, the financial aspect of it. It was $30,000 a year to go to my school, and
$30,000 to go to school in America.
Correct. Yeah, for out of state tuition. Yeah,
and that's a scholarship, is it? So because we touched on this, didn't we, before when we had our sort of exploratory chat? And I find it really interesting, actually, because what we talked about as well was the fact in the UK, there isn't a great deal that runs alongside professional sports. So, for example, I had Kieran Bywater on, and Kieran, when he was in the UK, was playing football at such a young age, but there was no emphasis at all, really, on a degree to run alongside his professional sport. So if something goes terribly wrong, then at least he's got something to fall back on. And you mentioned there being UK based and wanting to play in the States. In the States, you have to have a scholarship, don't you? You have to have a qualification or something, some education running alongside your professional sport. Is that correct?
Correct. So you have to maintain a GPA of 2, which is basically a C. So as long as you're averaging a C, then you're eligible to play. If that drops below a C, then you're classified as ineligible and you cannot participate in college athletics. So it's a system that's very well, I guess, intertwined with the academics. And we see this all the time. We see, the next up and coming, athlete, 18, 19 years old, that for whatever reason, they get injured or maybe just, psychologically they're just not in it anymore. There's so many different variables that stop players reaching that professional level. Remember, there's only a percentage. When you look at all amateur athletes, 1% from pro. And there's a reason for that, because there's so many factors that prevent you from getting there. And I think having that academic structure along with that professional dream, it just provides stability. And I guess it's forward planning. It's like long-term planning. I knew that if anything was to happen to me, if my basketball dream was to go off course, I would have a degree, debt-free degree that was there for me.
So you were at home in Plymouth, out your back garden, patting your basketball up and down, not to sound patronising. I used to love playing basketball when I was younger. I played for the Mendip Magics. We had a little team, actually. Played about 3 games, got obliterators. But I did enjoy basketball. There was a period, how old are you?
I'm 34 now.
Yeah, so there was a period when basketball was really popular in the UK, wasn't there? Like, I We were chatting about it a couple of days ago. About, it used to be on Channel 4. There used to be like a basketball show, didn't it, on Channel 4? And when I was in school, we used to love playing basketball because we had a great big gym and it had loads of basketball nets. So clearly, it was something to do on lunch breaks, and we ended up building a team. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. Actually, I really, really enjoyed it. But it's strange, isn't it, in the UK to have somebody that then goes. I didn't think about professional basketball or there being this career in basketball in the UK. You always just thought America, America, America. So, you're a young lad. You're like you said, you're practicing your basketball. You pick up a basketball for the first time. Did you ever think like it was going to take you off to America on a scholarship at all? Or how did that come about?
Not at the start. When I first started playing, I was 13 years old. I was awkward like many other teenagers were, but I was 6'5", skinny and uncoordinated kid. So I had very little prospects, if I'm honest. And I sometimes look back and think, thank goodness those coaches give me the time of day when I first started, because I remember my first year was like Bambi on ice. It was very uncoordinated. But I think with anything or everything, if you apply yourself and put hard work in, you will see improvements. And I got to sort of 15, 16, you can start to see the coordination come in, the skill developing, and then I think the love for the sport just grew as well. For me, it was a passion. And then like I said, I got to a position where I was like 18, 19 and one of the better players in the country, and that was my opportunity to have my American dream.
Fantastic. So you wouldn't say you were naturally a basketball player when you first began. So what then all of a sudden made you better? Was it just consistently training? Were you doing drills every day? What sort of level of training were you putting into being a better basketball player?
That was exactly it, Sam. So it was a complete fluke. I started playing basketball. I remember coming down from football training at school, and my PE teacher said, "Oh, Anthony, you're tall. You should come and play basketball." I thought, "No, I'm okay, thanks, sir. I'm too busy scoring goals." And he said, "No, you should try." And that was just complete fluke. I had the right PE teachers that were really, very, basketball focused. It was just very, very lucky in that sense. And the rest I think was just that. It was the discipline as well. Every day, I remember even going out on Christmas Day and shooting, whether it was raining, whether it's snowing. Sometimes I used to wear gloves. I used to go to the park. I used to go to my school. It was a no excuses every day training mentality that I had to have. Even the days that you didn't feel good, you didn't want to do it, I had to do it. And I felt like I was playing catch up as well, because remember, I wasn't competing against my fellow British kids. I was competing against the Americans. I had to take one of their scholarships, so. In their country, they start playing basketball when they're 5, 6 years old, when they're walking, like we do in football in the UK. So I always felt like I was playing catch up. So I think underlying, that was my motivation as well. I had to be just as good as them or better.
So how old were you when you went to the States?
I was 19, and
okay.
I'd be lying if I told you it was an American dream. It was tough, Sam. You get there, and the first few weeks of the honeymoon phase, it was sort of pinch yourself. I couldn't believe I was in this environment. Beautiful, beautiful campus. Incredible facilities. The emphasis and money they pump into sport it's unbelievable over there. Unbelievable. And you pinch yourself. But after that honeymoon phase wore off, it was 6 o'clock practices in the morning. So that was your weights conditioning. You would have breakfast. You'd go to class. Then you'd have individual practices. You would have another shower, you'd go to class. And then it was conditioning. So you'd be running outside in 90 degrees heat in Georgia. And then after that, it wasn't mandatory, but you were basically encouraged to go and play pickup. So you were having 3 or 4 practices a day. I was taking 3 or 4 showers a day. And by the time you got home, you'd eat dinner, you'd lay on the bed. But the next day you have to do it all again. So I think that what shocked me was the intensity. I went from being in the UK, I felt like I was a pretty disciplined hard worker, and in the States it was another complete intensity. And that I really struggled with that. If I'm honest, I first got there, but I think after a couple of months happened, the doubts come in. Physically, you're always tired. Mentally, you start questioning yourself. I'm like, should I be here? That sort of imposter syndrome in a sense. And, it's really difficult, and I must admit there was a couple instances where I wanted to throw in the towel and come home. And a lot of British kids, it doesn't work out for them over there, and I can see exactly why. It's incredibly difficult physically and mentally, especially these kids who I've never left Plymouth in my life before that. I used to watching Emmerdale at 7 o'clock at night, being with my parents and eating dinner, and it was all those comforts that you had were just torn away from you, and you're in this environment. And and a high pressure one as well. College basketball is it's a big deal over there, very, very big deal. So you had all these mixtures coming together.
I think college basketball, like when you see it on the TV, they go mad for it, don't they? It's like a proper, it's like proper leagues and stuff, isn't it? It's what people watch. They love college basketball. It's
in
just
the regular season, it's more popular than the NBA. So the NBA, there's a lot of games, 82 games, so the games don't mean as much. But the college game, you know, they're all amateur as well, so they're all 110%, all going 100 miles per hour, and it's really good to watch. And the American culture love that.
Is that because they love their college so much? So because Americans are quite proud, aren't they? So when it comes to like their college, it's like, that's my college, you know, my college beats your college. You don't really get that in the UK, do you really? Like, you know, people don't really care about my university, your university, unless it's like rowing or something like that. It's not a massive competitive type thing, is it? And it's a shame really, because whenever you watch like the films on TV of college football and stuff, it just looks so, you know, jocks and passion, doesn't it? And it's I quite like it, and I think it's quite cool. That must have like you said, you've gone from Plymouth to America, and it must have been a proper shock to the system. And that imposter syndrome you mentioned, I could imagine that would be just like, oh my god, because you are from the UK, aren't you, as well? Like you know, like you said, you started playing at 13. You must be thinking, why have I done this? So that sort of mindset then, okay, because you must have been growing that mindset from 13 years old, that work hard, keep going, keep, you know, daily improvements, keep doing it every day, make, you know, those incremental changes to your strength or to your ability and everything. And when you got to the States and you carried on pushing through to that, and you went through your qualification, you did your college basketball, you get to a stage where you're then going to be drafted, and then what happened?
Well, that's it. It was a process, and I think you know, coming from the UK, I was a big fish, small pond. And then when you get to the States, I was a bench player. I wasn't the star player anymore, and I think you have to adjust that as well, and it knocks on your confidence. So I kept pushing through, and I think failure for me, I didn't want to be that guy who failed, and that was a motivator for me. So you know, you stick to the plan, and things just changed for me. It got to around Christmas time, and as a freshman, I forced my way into the starting lineup, and then my performances increased with that. And then I was a 4-year starter, so I started the rest of my college career there. And we discussed basketball about size. It's a very size-less sport, and you guys can't see this, but I'm a little bit bigger than average, so I'm 6'7".
Yeah.
And you know, I don't fit under many doorways, but for my position in basketball, I was actually average to undersized. So I was a power forward, and in the NBA, you know, the power forwards are 6'11", 6'10". And like I was saying to you previously, it's not just your height, it's your wingspan. So I'm 6'7", my wingspan 6'7", but you can have you know, forwards in the league that have 6'10" with a 7'2" wingspan. So it's a perfect basketball body. Every time you jump for the ball, you're, you know, 4, 5, 6 inches you know, closer than your opposition. And I realized for my second year at university that I wasn't going to make the NBA, but I was still at a standard where I feel like I could make it professionally. So you know, my energy switched a little bit more to academics, to making sure I was doing what I was supposed to do and getting good grades. And you know, I continued to work, and it got to 2009 where I graduated as a senior. I was a all conference player, and I was I guess good enough for made the grade to play pro. I had a few agents contact me, and that's when the pro search started. Essentially, you know, you got offers coming in, and it was quite exciting. When I look back, it was stressful because you want to make the right choice, but it was exciting. I do remember those times, and my first pro job was in France. So off I went to France.
So you left America, over to France, bit of pro basketball over in France. So from France to the UK, because the bulk of your career in basketball was in the UK. So it didn't quite work out in France as well as you thought it might, or you didn't quite feel that connection to it. Decided to go back to your hometown and play for Plymouth. Yeah. What's the Plymouth team called again? It's not Leicester.
Plymouth Raiders.
The Plymouth Raiders. So you started playing for the Plymouth Raiders. So that kind of journey then to America, coming back and thinking, right, I want to continue playing pro basketball, I want to play in my local town. They obviously opened you with welcome arms, you know, American superstar college basketball player. You came back to the UK, got stuck in there. So how long were you then playing in the UK for?
So I played in the UK for 7 years after that. And Plymouth was my schoolboy dream. I used to sit in the crowd as a teenager and watch those guys play week in, week out. And I wanted to be like them. Essentially, they were my role models, and I got to practice with them when I was 16 years old. So it was really a really great experience for me to come back and play in front of my family as well. So, my family didn't get to see me play for 4 years because I was out in America. So it was really nice to be able to play, and they could see the player I am now as well. And got to team, I was a team captain down there. So it was a dream come true in that sense. It was fantastic, and won a bunch of games. And I got to 2012, and I transferred over to Leicester. So that's what brought me to the Midlands. And that first year, we won the treble. So it was the most winningest season one of the most winning seasons we had as a franchise. And we did the cup, the league, and the championship. So it was very, very fun. But then for me, as with sport, there's only a certain amount of time that you have. And I had 3 knee surgeries. I knew after the second knee surgery, my career was on the decline. If I could speak openly about that. And I think the second knee surgery, I had a complete rupture of the patellar tendon, so I was out for 9-10 months. And even when you come back, I can't tell you how many days you're in isolation, you work by yourself, and very difficult physically and mentally. But I worked very hard to get back into the pro side, and there were instances where I'd be that player I was, but I think it's really hard to maintain that consistency. So while this was going on, I had a young family, and I knew it was time to pick plan B.
So one thing I've definitely learned from speaking to some professional sports people is that, from the outside looking in, you look at people playing pro sports and you think they must be earning an absolute fortune. They're living their dream, they're playing their game, basketball, football, rugby, whatever it might well be. And you just think in the back of your head, oh Christ, they've landed on their feet, haven't they? They've got a good little job, they're playing basketball, they're probably earning an absolute fortune. But the reality is not like that, is it? With pro sport, you are, a big bulk of people that play pro sport aren't earning the types of money that you think they're earning. Is that, because this is where I want to kind of make it relatable, is that, you talked about that 1%. So there's a 1% that make it. There's also within that 1%, a lot of those that actually fail when they're even within that 1%. You mentioned about injury there. So it could be injury, it could be not playing the greatest game, it could be mental health, it could be financial health, it could be whatever it might well be. But your career might end a lot sooner than you actually hoped and you planned it to be when you had those boyhood dreams of playing in the NBA, for example. It could change. So one thing I definitely want to look at as well is that kind of playing a game that you love, but knowing that perhaps you're not going to earn £300,000 a year or whatever it might well be. Did that play on your mind at all when you were playing professional sport? Were you always kind of worried about your contract not being renewed, paying the bills, perhaps not having a job when you left the game? How did that play on your mind?
For me, not until later, and I think a lot of pro athletes will be able to resonate with this. I genuinely believed I was invincible, Sam. I never got injured. You never think it's going to stop. You think you're physically too strong. I did, and I know a lot of athletes. I thought I was physically too strong. I looked after myself too well to be injured, and you have that sense of invincibility. So it wasn't until I got to my late 20s when I had started having my knee surgeries. I thought, oh, okay, I'm not invincible. I have to start thinking, and that was the switch for me. But you're right. Financially, you can have some athletes at the very top, 1-2% that will earn insurmountable amounts of money that will not need to financially do anything after their career. But for the majority of athletes, regardless of whether you see as well as a viewer, you'd see them on Sky Sports or Eurosports. We played on all those channels, but we weren't making that next level money. Yes, I was very comfortable and I was very fortunate, but it had to be an option for me to have another career after basketball. And that's when I started thinking to myself, okay, what's my exit plan here? But it wasn't until I was in my late 20s, and financially I didn't make the best decisions. And I think that's where athletes have to, I think, try and be disciplined in that as well. I wish I was a bit more disciplined with my financial decisions. And I was, when I compared myself to some of my teammates, I was pretty conservative. I didn't blow my money, or I wasn't a loose spender, but I would have 8-9 months where I'd be based at my club, and then I would go to America for 3 months. Sorry, I would train over there, but I would live like a king. I would go to Miami. I'd go on holiday while I was on holiday. So you'd spend, instead of maybe using that money for the future, I would spend, because next year I knew I was going to get a contract. So I look back now and think I wish I was a little bit more disciplined and smarter with my choice. And I think that's not what majority of athletes don't get, that education. They just don't. You feel like you're invincible. You always feel like that money's going to come, but it may stop. The tap may stop.
And the thing is, though, I'm 38, and I'm only just really starting to get my head around my finances. I pissed most of it up against the wall and just went on holidays, traveling, and it was only until I had a kid in my mid 30s that I was like, shit, I need to really sort out my finances here. And so I don't think you're alone anyway. I think, sports or not, I think, especially, we just don't, especially in this consumer world, we want to spend. I do find it interesting though when I speak to people from sports background is the lack of financial planning though within sports, that there doesn't seem to be anybody really, you've got agents and whatnot that have wealth management and financial services written on their cards, but when it actually comes to them looking after you and what I would call traditional financial planning, like all aspects of your financial planning well-being, no one seems to, there isn't a huge amount of people that speak positively about that. And there's lots of shows and, discussions around how certain sports people have got themselves into financial difficulty where they weren't surrounded by the right people, because it's very take, especially at the top level game. So I think that that connection with financial planning in sport, there's definitely a lack of, and there's a lack of financial planners anyway, but there's a lack of that connection, I probably imagine, with the guys that are going out into that arena, into the sports arena, that I think, especially around parents as well, managing the money perhaps. And, like you said, agents, I can imagine there's quite personally, if I was a sports person, I'd be like, that's a niche. I'd be like straight in there looking at it. But, it depends on, again, the types of clients they could actually possibly be. And I think we'll move into that now. Let's talk about your career. So obviously your basketball career, fantastic. You had a really good career. You went off to America, college basketball, back to the UK, played professionally in the UK. You had a considerable, good earnings, good run. All of a sudden, injuries, thinking to yourself, I've got to do something else. Career comes to an end, and inevitably it will come to an end. And you're at that point and you're thinking, right, well, what's next? What do I do now? So what happened with you? What happened after basketball?
Life after sport can be very difficult. So I was in a situation, I was 30 years old. Mm-hmm. I had a young family. My little boy was 1 or 2 years old at the time. I had 2 degrees, so I just got my master's degree from Leicester University, which was great. I was able to again, couple a professional career with my academics as I was exiting my career, which helped me going forward. But even with the 2 degrees, I'd sit there at job interviews. I was 30 years old, 2 degrees, but with the experience of a 20-year-old. So it was really a working experience of a 20-year-old, which was really a difficult situation to be in, because I didn't really know where I fitted. I felt like every other 30-year-old was ahead in their career, or they were at a more senior role. And I was essentially applying for grad roles and entry roles because I'd not had any experience in that particular field. But what I did have, and what I will say that many other athletes will have and not know that they had, is the life experiences. I've been all over the world. I've lived in different countries, and it's little things like the collaboration that you'd have with sponsors, day in, day out, and the media. After a game, it's incredibly difficult. You've just practiced the whole week. You've given 100%, and maybe 100% isn't good enough, and you've lost the game. Literally 60 seconds after that final whistle goes, you're given an interview. Your emotions can be very high, especially if you've played poorly as well. But you have to conduct yourself in a way that you represent yourself, your family, and the team. So you can't always say what you want to say, what you're feeling, because it's not appropriate. So there's lots of things in that instance that I think help your emotional intelligence, help your awareness to other people, and have empathy as well for supporters, fans, etc. as well, because they pay to watch you play. So there's lots of different things I was learning over the years as an athlete. I didn't know I was learning it. It was just happening because of the environment I was in.
That's interesting. Yeah. So there were plenty of these transferable skills that you were building up. I like what you said there about being empathetic to the crowd as well. These guys are coming to watch you. They're paying their money to watch you, and having that kind of emotional intelligence to be aware of that I think is a real skill set in its own right anyway. What other skills do you think are transferable from the world of professional sports into the business arena? You mentioned there about that. Because when I think about it, I think like this teamwork and this determination and drive. But what is the reality? What are the transferable skills from professional sports, say, into your current career, which is financial planning?
You hit the nail on the head with those two things you just said there. I think hard work, it goes hand in hand with anything you do in life, but teamwork is huge. So in basketball, you're on a team and you've got to selflessly give up sometimes your individual goals for the greater good. And what I mean by that is you'll have you're graded on statistics. You'll have your averages, how many points you score, rebounds, block shots. Now, if your individual averages aren't good, you're putting yourself in jeopardy for getting yourself a contract the next year for that team or other teams. Now, if you're selfish and you shoot the ball too much, or you don't make the right plays for the team, for the overall team, then you won't win a championship. You will not. If you've got too many members on that team that cannot sacrifice their own personal gain for the team, you will not win a championship. I've been on very talented rosters that haven't won championships for that very reason. So it's a little bit like financial planning in that sense. You cannot always be individually goal orientated. You've got to do the right thing for the client. You've got to do the right thing for the business, and you've got to put those other motivators or other incentives to the side for the greater good. And that's one thing I'm learning in basketball, from basketball. That's exactly the same as that. You can't always be so focused on your individual. So just like in basketball is how many points you score. As a financial advisor, it would be how much revenue you generate. You cannot be solely focused on that, because it will not be a success in the great scheme of things. So it's little things like that and understanding, and having players to perform well, not being jealous, being mature enough to be able to celebrate your teammates as well. That's something that sport teaches you very, very well, because it's not just a pat on the back or a handshake. In sport, it's a big media. That player is getting champagne, it's getting Twitter shout outs, it's getting news headlines, it's getting back page of the paper. You've got to be happy for your teammate and want to share that with them as well. And I think those are little tangible things that sport teaches you as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. I really like that explanation. Actually, teamwork's the dream work, isn't it? At the end of the day,
yeah.
And I think that's what, when you look at financial planning, you're absolutely right. If you're focusing too much on something like prestige, or too much on the money, then on your own personal gain, then perhaps there's a chance that you might be putting the company in jeopardy. Perhaps you're trying to push something through that shouldn't go through. Compliance shouldn't be putting it through. You're thinking about your own finances too much over the actual clients. And if you're putting that client at the heart of everything that you're doing, then you're going to be doing the right thing for the whole business, for the whole process. And that's something that sports taught you, then, is to be more of a team player, less I, more team. I think that's a really great transferable skill set anyway into any business, isn't it? But that drive, that determination as well, that, pick yourself up and get yourself going. Have you found that that's been transferred into the world of business and financial planning?
Definitely. And I'm very, very grateful for that. I think what I always like to say is, are you working hard when people aren't looking? So it's very easy to work hard when the director's there, or you've got a target, you've got to hit target. But I think what I've learned from sport, and how I got to America and how I kept my pro job, is I worked hard when people weren't looking. My coach didn't know I was shooting at 7 o'clock in the morning, or my coach didn't know I was doing extra sprints, or my coach didn't know I was working out in the gym, doing extra. It was something I did to make sure that I could achieve my goals and feel like I could deservedly achieve my goals. I think for me, if I knew someone else was working harder than me, that bothered me. So yes, in that sense, those drives, those things have helped me. And I think especially in this environment we're now working from home, where you're not supervised, you could cut corners, you could do whatever you want. But I think having that self-discipline to consistently work hard every day is something I've inherited from sport, and I'm very, very grateful to have that, for sure.
Cool. Okay, well, let's talk about your first financial planning job then. So you working for Mattioli Woods. Okay, you obviously had a little bit of a stint there, didn't you, in recruitment before you got into financial planning. Michael Page, so financial services recruitment. Did you then pick up when you were at Michael Page what the role of a financial planner was? Did you sort of get a bit of a feel for it when you were working at Michael Page? Were you working on those types of vacancies at all, or not?
No, not at all, really. Michael Page was I saw the company, and recruitment for me looked like a really good role, because it was a complete, it was a 360 role, in the sense of you'd have your relationships with your candidates, sorry, and then you'd have the relationship with the client, the business. And I really liked that people interaction. For me, it had to be with people. I feel like from sport, that was something I liked and I was good at, and I needed to have that people interaction. And recruitment was exactly that for me. And it was a big company, FTSE 250, and I wanted that more corporate structure. I felt like, and very difficult at the start. It was like American, that says I'd go to an office every day. I'd have to sit in an office for 9-10 hours. I'm like, do people do this on a daily basis? It's crazy. Wore a suit, shirt, tie, and all these things. It was like I compared myself to a child wearing school uniform on the first day of school, because it just wasn't something I was accustomed to. I'd go to work in tracksuit bottoms and baggy shorts. That was my attire for the last decade. So that was very different for me. But I think, again, when the honeymoon phase wear off, it was very difficult to adapt, and I had to generate a more of an endurance for being able to sit at a desk all day, if I'm honest. But I was able to push through that, and after 9 months, I gained a promotion, and things were going very well. But for me, I don't know. I think I needed something more long term. I was still trying to figure out myself what I wanted to do, and this was my first job. Remember, after basketball, and I still felt like I was still searching for that identity. What did I want to do? What did I want to do? And I was actually interviewing with Mattioli Woods at the time, and at the time it wasn't right for me, and I went to Michael Page. But anyway, I remember this very well. I was finishing my dissertation at Leicester University, and I got given a call by one of the wealth management directors at Mattioli Woods when he found out I was withdrawing from the process. And he said, look, Anthony, you sure you want to do this? I think you'd be very good at wealth management. And I said, yes, thank you for the call, but I'd already accepted the job. So, but that phone call resonated with me all that time. I'd saved his number on my phone, and it wasn't until 2 years after that I had to drive past Mattioli Wood's office every day to get to Michael Page's office, actually. And I think it was playing on my mind, did I make the wrong decision there? And I did more research on financial planning, and I thought I could really, really like this. This could be me for the next 20, 30 years. And was one random morning, I just got done with a session at the gym, and I called the director. I said, oh, hi, Doug. I was the abnormally tall guy you met around 2 years ago. Can we grab a coffee? And that was essentially it. We grabbed the coffee, and before I knew it, I was interviewing for Mattioli Woods. And 2 weeks later, I was on the final interview, and they gave me a role. And I think what I really liked about this, Sam, is that I didn't have to start from complete scratch. They actually valued my life experience. They valued that I had another career previously. They wanted to take me as a blank slate and say, look, we can put you on an accelerated fast track training program. Yes, it will take hard work. Yes, it won't be easy. But if you give us that energy and give us that commitment, we could put you in a position where you could be a qualified wealth management consultant. And that's all I needed. That was my opportunity there, and that was it. And that was the greatest thing. I got in on an administration level while doing your exams, and everything was, like they said, it was all condensed, all accelerated. But I was learning so much on a daily basis, so much. And you pass your exams, and each month goes on, and I learned so much during that time. I look back now, and the training was fantastic. It was really, really good. A lot of role plays, real life situation, a lot of shadowing, observing. It was great. Very, very good.
Mattioli Woods, they're good, aren't they, at getting people through their qualifications and moving them through an accelerator program. So you started okay, fantastic. Phoned them up, got yourself an interview, got back in there and thought, right, financial planning's for me. They got you on an accelerator program. And when we say accelerator program, that was you starting at grassroots level then, yeah? So doing administration for financial advisors, and then at the same time studying your qualifications. How long did it take you to pass your level 4 qualifications? Let's give people an indication of how long it takes.
Yeah, it was about a year and a couple of months. Because RO6, remember, you can only take at certain times. So yeah, it was just over a year. It was tough. You couldn't have, without doing extra. I was doing morning and evening studying, so around the kids, work, the family. It was a very condensed schedule, but it was something I was very motivated in doing. So, but you can achieve it with a full-time role, a year, 18 months.
So someone listening to this who's thinking about perhaps changing career, whether they're coming from professional sports or another career altogether, then, being a guy who had a family, wife, kids, house and all that kind of stuff, you were a busy guy, you still managed to fit those qualifications in whilst doing the job as well. And it took you just over a year to pass your level 4 qualifications. Do you think doing the level 4 qualifications whilst actually working within a financial planning firm, do you think that was massively beneficial? Do you think it would have been a lot harder if you were, say, studying whilst being a fireman or something like that?
I do, because I'm someone who learned from a textbook, but and also real life. So I would read something in a textbook, and then the next day I would be part of that process. It was connecting the dots. I think sometimes, a lot of times, you do something for a process. Someone tells you to do it, you just do it, and you don't really think deeply about it. You just do it because someone's told you to. But I was able to apply while I was doing it, and that was the best. So it got to, I'd say, the 6-12 month mark at Matthew Woods, and the dots were starting to connect. The first 6 months, I was just doing things just because I was told to do them, and it's really hard to have a reasoning or knowing why you're doing it. But I would say that helped doing the studies, along with having that frontline perspective, because you're just able to learn faster because you're actually seeing real life and you're a part of real life processes.
Okay, cool. So how long were you doing the administration role for?
6 months. So you do the
Okay.
administration for 6 months, and then the next 6 months you do you're assigned to a senior consultant or a director, and you shadow. So you do a lot of their power planning, their support work, but you're also going to their meetings, so you understand how they interact, and that's what you can't learn from a textbook. And certain individuals can be incredibly intelligent, but don't quite have those cues with the clients, and I felt like that was my strength. I love interacting with people, and I feel like I understand people, and for me it was the most fun part, because I got to see the interactions, the genuinely real concerns of clients, the elation, the highs, the lows. I love that, and then being able to implement a plan around those emotional responses from the client.
Yeah, there's a definite need for a high level of emotional intelligence, I think, within anything where you're dealing with other human beings, because as you mentioned, there are so many opportunities to pick up cues, aren't there? From facial expressions, how they say something, they might be holding back, body language. There's just so much that you can do when you have a higher level of emotional intelligence. It's not to say that if you're a more technical type minded person, you can't be a financial planner, because there's plenty of them out there. But I think sometimes what I hear with people is that they've got that level of, I'm really good relation. Perfect example is recruitment. If you're a good recruitment consultant, you need to have a wicked level of emotional intelligence. You have to be able to build really strong relationships, because you're spinning multiple plates and dealing with very stressful situations for people. And what you tend to find is that some people get put off by having to do the qualifications, do the exams, because they think it's going to be like, oh, Jesus Christ, I've got to go back to school, I've got to do the qualification, it's going to be really tough. But they know that they've got the ability to do the job, and sit down with somebody and go through their financials and, and understand the person, basically, the relationship side of it. And I think when you have a company that invests in that support to getting your qualifications done, so on the job learning, whether you be an administrator with a clear career structure into power planning, when you've got that running alongside your qualifications, somebody who's an experiential learner like yourself, like me as well, I need to see, and I think that has a massive benefit to somebody's early onset career. I speak to a lot of administrators, and sometimes I want to be a financial advisor. And it's, well, you've been sat in an administration role for the last 3 years. Yeah. Well, it's like, well, what are your company doing about getting behind you and supporting you? Have you asked to get put in front of clients, perhaps, to listen to what client? Well, they really want to do that with me. And it just shows, doesn't it, when you've got that company behind you that invests in you and want to show you things, and get you exposed to it and say, come and learn with us, have a feel. I think that's so much better than just, you're an administrator, sit there, and then if you want to do your qualifications, you can do your own and we won't pay for it. It's harsh, isn't it? And I think that's why we've got this big divide sometimes within financial planning, with administration, power planning, that a lot of these company directors perhaps don't have time to do it because there's a lot of smaller firms out there. Matthew Woods is quite a large firm. But investing in the guys and getting them, learning on the job is going to massively improve their commitment to passing the qualifications and getting up to level 4 and becoming a financial planner really quickly. So you went from administrator into a bit of power planning to go taste of power planning as well, sitting in client meetings, working alongside a financial advisor. So when were you signed off then to become a financial planner?
It was December 2019.
Okay.
And what I will say, in addition to what you said there, Sam, as well, I was very, very lucky. So I
Yeah.
shadowed wealth management directors and team directors, two two of which I'm very, very appreciative. And they didn't have time. Please believe me when I look at their schedule, they didn't have time, but they made time. They invested time in me, and that's something I'll be eternally and grateful for.
Mentors, though, this is the job of a of a mentor, and you've got directors doing that within Mattioli Woods. It's that's a rarity, mate. In all honesty, it's and as you say, you're incredibly grateful for that.
Yeah, and I learned so much from them as well, just the way that they conduct themselves, but also the technical aspects as well. It's been an assess a situation and provide a solution in real time a lot of the time as well, which was it was just watching. Sometimes I'd sit there and watch poetry, it was just brilliant and fantastic, and I'll never forget that. And even to this day now, I don't ever feel like they're not accessible. Even Bob Woods, our founder. He is incredibly intelligent, accessible, all of the above. He has an MBE from the Queen, but even him, we could call him, and he's accessible to us. We have an in-house investment team, guys that are managing funds of £500 million, and they will talk to us. We have time, we can collaborate with them. So it's very, very accessible and very good in terms of the overall collaboration. It's the teamwork aspect I was thinking about. It's like the star player not thinking he's too good for the team. That's Matthew Woods, and I like being a part of this team.
What's been the toughest thing about being a financial planner for you so far?
Wow. I think being exposed to new situations and always wanting to deliver there and then. So sometimes you could be asked a question, and me, I want to solve problems, and I'd like to solve problems there and then. But sometimes you've got to take a step back and fully assess the situation. For fear of making a hasty decision and it not being the best decision. But also, it's okay that you continue to learn. You can have consultants that have been in this industry for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and they'll only ever come across that situation once a decade. So I think the most difficult thing is one of the things I love about this industry. It's self-evolving. It's very rare you'd have a client that you provide a solution for, and then the next client you could provide that same solution for. It just doesn't work like that. There's no off-the-shelf solution. It doesn't work. So many different variables, individual circumstances. So I'd say the hardest thing is what I like most about the job, and it's just broad, and the solutions that you can provide are so dependent on that individual. But that's hard. I think I'm someone who likes to be good at what I do. So I was in a position where I played it long enough to understand where I needed to be, what I needed to do, and I mastered that role, if you want to say that. But to master this role takes a lot longer. I would say to truly master the financial planning role. And I think I've got to be disciplined, and I've got to be patient because I'm not anywhere close to being that master as of yet. But I want to get there.
So in reality, then, passing your level 4 qualification, are you then a financial planner, or are you literally just at the beginning of your journey?
You're at the beginning of the journey because you've got to get signed off as well, and there's a very very intense process. So the last 6 months you're on a training regime per se, and if you don't get signed off, then the Mattioli Woods cannot let you represent them as a wealth management consultant, and that's more so pressure, I would say, than the exams themselves, because you're thrown into high intense situations, whether that be a role play or a one-to-one examination, and you're getting very finely pointed assessed on each individual way, not just your technical knowledge, but also how you conduct yourself, and how are you making sure you're disclosing the mandatories and being able to respond to a client. Because I think it's very easy for young consultants to try and information large how much they know and trying to prove to the client how smart they are instead of listening. So if you don't listen, that's one thing I've learned very, very quickly in life in general. If you do not listen, then the solution is not going to be as applicable, as appropriate to that individual. So the training is very, very difficult. So that's the last 6 months of the program. So you get signed off then, and then that's when you're essentially a wealth management consultant, stroke financial advisor.
Okay, so since being signed off as a financial planner, wealth consultant. You can wealth management consultant is what you call, isn't it? At Mattioli Woods. So since being signed off as a financial planner, what's it been like? Have you, has it been massively different to like what you thought it would be, or is it better, or is the career something opening up to you going, wow, there's just so many opportunities here, I'm pleased I got into it? What's it been like for you since being signed off as a financial planner?
It's a tough question, Sam, because it's been all of the above. I feel like I've sort of expressed and experienced the majority of the emotions, the highs, the lows, because I've inherited clients now, so that's brilliant that I'm able to build relationships with with my clients and provide solutions right off the bat. But also the way we're structured, we feel like it's the most genuine way to have a relationship is to increase the client bank yourself. So you've got that business development area or section of things as well, where you're increasing your client portfolio, but also your professional contact base as well. So your accountants and solicitors, other finance professionals. So that's been really, really busy. And the first few months, I kind of hit the ground running. It was great. And then the global pandemic hit, and then you feel like I felt like when it first happened, it was oh no, my career is going to be stalled and delayed quite significantly here, because my job is to meet people, and I couldn't meet people. And the first month of lockdown was literally just calling clients, making sure they were okay, reconfirming some of their strategy. A lot of them were scared. So that's where the emotional intelligence really came in as an advantage for me, is to empathize and understand what their concerns were. So that was really good for me looking back now, to have those experiences so early in my career. But then going forward, is to meet professional contacts. That was stopped. I couldn't get in my car anymore and travel the country, which that was the part of the job I really enjoyed. That's my motivator for me in doing this. But then the months came on, and this become more socially acceptable. Your video calls, your conferencing and podcasts, etc. So that's been a breath of fresh air. I'm able to continue to develop my professional network and communicate with prospect clients, etc. So this is a place now where I'm really happy that I'm able to do my job. So I'm sorry I'm not able to give you that one. The answer to my question is it's been a roller coaster. It really has. But I think we've been in a market and an environment where I think a lot of other people have felt that roller coaster too. I think I'd be very foolish to think that I was the only one experiencing the highs and lows of the past few months.
I think it's good. I think it's good for your character. I think anybody that I've spoken to who started financial planning, like some people have started setting up their businesses on their own, self-employed, and then coronavirus hit. People have just been signed off as financial planners. People have just joined companies. I think it's great to start in a situation, in an environment which is difficult, because I set this recruitment business up in the last recession, and I'm going through it all again now. And I think, God, I remember how bad that was at the time, and it was really stressful. And so many years later, it's no different. But you kind of change, and you look at different ways to do things. You adapt a little bit. You mentioned about video and stuff. I never did video stuff ever did video stuff, but it was there. It was just there for us to use, but we chose not to use it. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, you're thrown in and you're forced into using it, and it's become incredibly beneficial. I don't know about you, but I've put a lot of emphasis on my social media, where I can't leave and meet people. I thought, well, I'll up my game on social media and see how many people I can connect with and get to know me personally without actually visiting me on a face-to-face basis. And that's been a really interesting journey. It's helped me set up the Financial Planner Life podcast. And that's been great. And I've been meeting really great people like yourself. And I've been learning loads about financial planning from the people that work within it. And from that, I'm thinking to myself, well, there's loads of people out there that would like to get into financial planning that don't know what it's like to work in it as a career. And now they're learning. So there are lots of good things that can come off the back of something like this situation. I think it makes you a stronger, more rounded individual. More sort of...
No, I agree. I think without struggle there's no growth, is there? And I think when you finally get through that struggle, I'm sure you're living this as a business owner yourself. When you do get through those tough periods and you're able to enjoy the rewards and when times are going well, and sport is very much so like that. For no reason whatsoever, you can still be sleeping well, eating well, but you can go for periods of just playing poorly. And when you have a bad day in the office, it can go unnoticed, but when you have a bad day in basketball, professional sports, you've got a couple of thousand people that see you have a bad day, and then it really plays on you. And then maybe the next match, you've eaten right, you've slept well, but for whatever reason that ball's not going in the hole, or you're not playing well, you're not performing well. So that's something that I'm learning that was out of my control. I was controlling my controllables by my diet, my rest, my work ethic, my schedule. But for whatever reason, out of my control, sometimes you play well. And that's exactly like the economy, the environment. You cannot control, the environment, the economy. But as long as you're maintaining that, then things will change. Your bad form or the unfortunate situation you're in, it will change. And that's something that I feel like I've learned in a previous life or a previous career. I'm taking this with me into financial planning.
Yeah, definitely. You can tell from you as well, and from other people I've spoken to, sport definitely massively improves your mental strength, I think, and your focus and perseverance. I think, it teaches you to get knocked down and get back up again. You're not going to win every game. It also teaches you about teamwork, doesn't it? That ability to fit in and to recognize it's not just a solo mission that, if you focus too much on yourself, then it's going to be a detriment to other people, perhaps. Yeah, definitely there are huge transferable skills from professional sport into financial planning. What's your sort of next, where do you want to see yourself going within the next, say, 2 to 3 years at Mattioli Woods then? Have you got a plan of action? Are you still on a career structure there? Have they got one in place for you still, or are you hit the top and that's it now?
No, not made it to the top yet. So unfortunately, I think that's why I like this. I think it's I would say anyone who wants to be a financial planner, it's not going to come. Your fame and fortune is not going to come overnight.
No.
It's not an easy industry in that sense, but the rewards, both financially or if you're driven by career, status, you can you can obtain some great heights. I think that's what I like about this. It's a long-term play. I think if you do things the right way, you service, you have good relationships with your clients, then naturally it will evolve and it will increase. And and I think I like that because there is no ceiling on this. I don't need good knees to be a good wealth management consultant.
No.
Sport, the clock was ticking. There's the average age of a financial advisor is at 55 years old, so that's still 20 years away from where I'm currently positioned. So I like that there's no ticking clock that I had in my previous career, and you can go any which way. I was a club captain for a university team and for Plymouth Raiders, and I'd like to be a leadership role as well. So maybe a leadership role with people management and responsibilities is something that I think I'm very much motivated by, and I like having that responsibility. So I think I can see myself going that way. But I just like the avenues are so wide, and I love that. There's no restrictions there. I just want to continue to improve my knowledge. Like I said, be a master at this. Within this industry, and I think legislation is always changing. So you're never going to know everything, because at the point you feel like you do, the tax rules have changed, or legislation has changed, or there's some of a ruling. So that's something that's quite motivating as well. You've got to evolve. You cannot stay stagnant. And this is a role where you must adapt, or you could be old school or obsolete.
Yeah, definitely a good industry if you don't want to do something day in, day out, the same every day. Financial planning gives you that variety, doesn't it? Yeah. That's one thing for sure. And if you're that type of person, there's always a problem to solve. There's always a person to work out and to empathize with and to dig deeper to understand. I always liken financial planning, and I'm likening it more really to like a well-being proposition, like almost like a counselor, isn't it? This is where you're seeing so much of this life-centered financial planning and talking about fears and worries and anxieties, because these are the drivers, aren't they, that make us have bad habits with money and bad habits in life in general. And I think the more that we start to connect on a human basis, the better we can be as consultants in whatever field that we're in. But I think financial planning is definitely an area. So if someone's on the outside looking in, perhaps from another career, perhaps they're working in a different profession and they're a bit bored of their profession and they're thinking about swapping over to something which is a bit more meaningful. I think financial planning historically has always had connotations with people in suits who when they come and see you, they just take your money and make money from your money, and that's it. They're just after your money. And historically, there's always been a bit of a negative view about financial planners, but now it's changing. People are sitting down with a financial planner who's actually giving a crap about their well-being, and that's having a positive impact on somebody's life, their happiness, their fears, their worries, and they can go into their retirement or stop worrying. You know what it's like? You got a kid, didn't you? You sit there and you think to yourself, God, what am I going to be doing when I'm 50, 60 years old? Like, when you actually sit down and work out your financials, you feel a lot calmer, don't you? You do feel calmer about it.
There's always a reason too, as well, Sam. There's always an underlying reason. So if a client comes to me and says, my goal is to have £1 million pension fund, and then you think, okay, that's great. We can implement a plan to how you're going to get there. But why do you want to get there? And then that's when you start uncovering the human behind that £100 pension fund objective. They want to go on 3 holidays a year. They have a family that they want to treat. They have they've had a volatile career, and they just want that financial security in retirement. For whatever reason it is, there are real human beings behind the
exactly
figures. And I think that's the great thing about that. And it changes. You do an annual trustees meeting on a year basis, and that person could be feeling this way one year. Something could happen to them life-wise, whether that be a health scare or I don't know, a life event, and their perception on the world changes. So we must adapt and adjust that financial plan accordingly as well. So it's really neat in that sense. And you're right, it's understanding that individual and what makes them tick, because it's very few people that would just be motivated purely from they want to look at that fund and just see the 6 zeros. It's very rare that you'll get an individual that just wants to see that figure. There's always reasons why.
On a final note, what single piece of advice would you give somebody who's early on in their career in financial planning? What single piece of advice would you give them to get ahead?
I would firstly say it's not easy. So if you think this is going to be one of those situations where you can go through the exams half-assed and sort of get through there, it's not one of these, because when you do become a financial planner, it's not the end of the it's kind of like me in the States. When you get to America, the American dream doesn't just, you're not just going to chill. There's so much more work to be done when you are qualified and you're a younger or an earlier financial planner. So I guess my first piece of information is that you just understand that it's difficult, but that's a good thing. There's a reason why there's a shortage of financial advisors, because it's not easy. Any industry, I think that's easy or quite easily attainable, then there wouldn't be a demand for it. Supply would outlive the demand there. So, and just know that it's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows, is what I would say. But if you're serious about being a financial planner, then that's all you need. And, if you can commit to yourself and think, I want to be a financial planner, that's all you need, Sam. Yeah, that's all you need. If it's something for you that's half-assed, if you're, I might be good at that, probably difficult to try it out, because you're going to have to invest a lot of time and energy in the earlier stages to even get qualified. And when you are qualified, it's investing a lot of time and energy into actually getting up and going, because it's not an overnight win, this industry. So I would say you need to have that inner motivation that you want to do this. For individuals that don't know if they want to do this, then perhaps an administration role or a fast track consultancy role like I did myself. That way you'll know after 12, 18 months whether it's for you long term. And if you get that buzz and you get that excitement from seeing interactions, from observing meetings, and if you could look at the senior consultant and think to yourself, I want to do that one day, that is for you. If it's not, then you've just you spent 12, 18 months trying it and it hasn't worked out, then you crack on and look for the next thing. But that's what I would advise. I would advise to do it that way, and try and always incorporate yourself in with a financial with a wealth management firm or a financial services firm. You give the example of being a firefighter and studying separately. I think, me personally, I could be wrong, but I think that personally is a bit more of a difficult route, because you're not in the front line there. You're not seeing things from a real life perspective, and I think that's where you could potentially be for the next 20, 30 years, in that real life environment. So that would be my advice. That would be my advice. I think I don't think there's any other pointers there, but yeah, just crack on with those studies if you're thinking about opening up that textbook.
Yeah, cracking. Perfect. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time today, Anthony. Really, really, really appreciate it. And thanks for sort of telling us about your career and your basketball career and how you've moved into financial planning. And thanks for being so positive about it as well. You know, it just clearly shows that, you know, that energy and drive and enthusiasm that you've got, those transferable skills that have come from sport. I think a lot of us do have it inside of us. It's just, it's never easy, is it? You've just got to get back up again, keep going, keep going, keep going. There is no end, you know, you just get better and better and better. And that's what financial planning is all about, isn't it?
It is.
Top man. Great. Anthony, thanks for your time today, mate.
Pleasure, Sam. Absolute pleasure.